So I think some of you might have an idea, but anyhow, there are 180 representatives in the State House and 56 members of the Senate. And our speaker was the leader, and our speaker died this past fall, so we had a new speaker was elected. And then we had 47 new members out of 180 that were newly elected, and Saira is one of them. It's a wonderful, diverse group of representatives reflective of the diversity of Georgia. So it was kind of a slow start to the session. We are all members of the minority party, the Democratic Party. We have 79 members, or really it was 79 members of the party, and 101 Republicans. And for most of the session, we voted that we talked about, there's a lot of green on the board. We had a lot of agreement on issues. And then just towards the end, we started having some more controversial bills passed that we'll talk to you a little bit about. And but still, we did accomplish some things. Does anyone have any idea? What's the thing we have to pass every year? What would you imagine? One bill, what do we have to pass every year in the State House? That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So the budget, this year's budget was $32.4 billion, and at the very beginning of session, we amended the 23 budget and increased that a little bit too. And so Georgia did do well. We weathered well during the pandemic. We had $6 billion in surplus, and we had ideas about how to use that surplus in different ways, but our governor led the way, and I think you'll be pleased with some of the ways that he decided to use it. And one is that we did give out, in our amended budget, we approved income tax rebates. So this will be the second year that people will be eligible to receive that $250 for single filers, $500 for couples. So that will be coming your way this year if you pay taxes. And then something we passed in this year's budget was a property tax rebate. It'll be of $18,000. So if you are a homeowner in DeKalb, that will come through DeKalb County, but you'll get assessment decrease of $18,000. And so that should help decrease your property taxes $250 to $500. So that will be something nice. I mean, we had ideas about other ways you could spend it, and one-time funds like capital funds to invest in housing, or things like that. But this is what the governor asked us to do, and we did pass those two things. In the budget, we did pass. We've had a problem with state workers have been grossly underpaid, and we've had a very high turnover rate for our state employees, and so we've been working on increasing salaries last year and this year. And this year we did pass another $2,000 pay increase for all our state employees, and a $2,000 pay raise for our teachers and the aides, all the certified teachers, and teaching personnel.
Hey,
yay!
Thank you.
Yay! Thank you. We love our teachers. Are you a teacher?
Forensic mental health.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then we also gave a 5.1% increase for school nutrition workers, and transportation workers, our bus drivers, and nurses at our schools. So those are all, they all really needed it. We need to, our teachers and our school workers have been through so much during this pandemic especially, and so we really wanted to honor and show our respect for them by doing that. And we also passed pay raises for our public safety workers, for the people that work for Georgia Safety Patrol and at the DNR, and because their salaries were very much lower than the private sector. So those are some things we're able to do. So does anyone, and there's a lot more in the budget. I have some, if you want to learn more about the budget, I am happy to answer questions about that in the question and answer session. Is there any burning question anyone has about that offhand right now? Or yeah, good, okay.
Can I just say something about
Yes,
the budget?
yes,
I mean,
yes.
I just think it's worth noting that the budget is a values document. right? It's
Right.
how much money we have in the state, how we're allocating that money, and we are saying what's important and what's not, right? And I just want to make it very clear that in the House, in the General Assembly, the majority party is in charge. So Republicans are in charge of the Senate, they're in charge of the House, and they have the governor's office. So each chamber that has to sign off on the budget is led by Republicans. So when we're talking about values and we're talking about priorities that are in the budget, those are the Republican priorities. And yes, there are good things that come out for, and I don't mean to over politicize everything, and I'm not trying to over politicize everything, but when we look at DeKalb County, we're a overwhelmingly Democratic district. We are a district that is near a city center. And so I only bring that up to say that yes, there are things in the budget that are good, and when we're looking at statewide issues, we want things to be for Atlanta metro area counties, we want things for rural area counties, but there is a big, I think, push by the people in charge to prioritize their districts. And so I wanted to frame the conversation that way because it's so different from our governments and local government, let's say in DeKalb County, that is led by Democrats, and Democrats are working together. It's a very different kind of, the leverage is very, very different. So just wanted to lay that out at the beginning of the conversation because it really impacts every single bill that goes into that place. If we're voting for it and we support it, it may not go far enough, right? It may not be the kind of bill that we want it to be, but we support it because it does something, and they're not gonna go as far as we want to. And then on the stuff that we oppose, it's gonna pass whether we oppose it or not, right? Because they have the numbers and we don't. So I'll stop there, but I think that's just an important point for the budget and every other thing. It is values, and it's not necessarily democratic values.
It's a moral document.
It's a moral document.
I will say, education is the highest percentage of the budget, and healthcare is the next. But we might spend even more in those areas if we had the opportunity to be in charge. Transportation, too. So then I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about health, about some things we did. We did pass a veterans mental health service program, so nonprofits can apply for grants from the state for that. So I didn't know if you had any veterans in the audience, but that's something that I think is good. And then as far as Medicaid, so Medicaid is, for our lowest income Georgians, and unfortunately, 176,000 children are still uninsured in Georgia, and we are the 4th highest in the nation of having uninsured Georgians, and we're only one of 10 states that has not fully expanded Medicaid to close that coverage gap to cover our lower income Georgians. So what we did in 2019, the General Assembly passed a partial expansion, and that is going to take effect this summer. And so, unfortunately, as a Democrat, we had fought for full expansion, like 40 other states have done, and that would have covered 500,000 Georgians. But instead, we have this partial expansion, which does have some work requirements, and it will cover about 50,000 Georgians. So that will be happening this summer. And the other big thing that's happening this summer is that if you know anyone that's on Medicaid, we have during the pandemic, the federal government let everyone just stay on Medicaid. So our rolls have gotten very, we have a lot of people have gotten coverage during the pandemic, which is wonderful. But now what's going to happen is that deadline is coming this April, where now everyone has to be reassessed. And so some people that are on Medicaid their income may be too high. And so this is a really big process. Hey, welcome. This is a very important process. So if you know anyone on Medicaid, it's very important that their contact information is updated so that the government workers can get with them, because if they make too much money now to qualify for Medicaid, then they need to apply for a plan on this new state exchange that will be opening up in July. And with this state exchange for healthcare, you'll be able the one good thing is several years ago, I mean, a bad thing was several years ago is when Georgia was just crazy about being against Medicaid expansion, they said that you can't access the Affordable Care Act program. But then they realized that was wrong. So on this state exchange, you'll be able to access the federal, you'll be able to access ACA, and they're claiming it's going to be even easier to use, so we'll see. But anyhow, that's something for everyone to be aware of, that this new program will be beginning in July. Yes, and then we did pass some bills for our schools that are related to health. I'm always big on the schools because I'm a member of the education committee, but we've had, like, for glucogen, that kids that are diabetics, I mean, schools can have glucogen that's not assigned to a patient, just to have on hand in case a child needs it. We have, if kids have epilepsy, schools have to have a program to learn how to deal, how to deal appropriately with kids with epilepsy. We passed a law that treats vaping the same as smoking, so you can't vape in the public areas where you can't smoke anymore, because vaping is, we've realized now is very harmful to other people's health as well. And then we did pass Medicaid for pregnant women. So those are some of the things we passed on the health side. And then as far as education, one thing that I had worked on was a literacy program. We have, unfortunately, in the state of Georgia and even nationally, we have an illiteracy crisis. Only a third of our students in third grade are reading proficiently, and then another third are kind of reading, and then a third aren't hardly reading at all. And so this is a grave problem, as you can imagine, and so we passed a bill to establish a literacy council to study this issue, to understand the problem, and then also we passed a early reading act where we'll be screening children starting kindergarten, first, second grade, and if they are not reading appropriately, giving interventions, reading interventions, and then we're also, it turns out that nationally, not just in Georgia, but nationally, many schools of instruction have been using a very popular but ineffective method to teach reading, and so now we have a law that is changing, and the Department of Education is rolling out standards so that they'll be using what they would call evidence-based literacy instruction, or basically they call it science of reading. It's basically like a foundational dose of phonics in the early years. We've kind of gotten away from that in our teaching programs. So that's something that I'm excited that we passed that, and I'm hoping to be appointed to the Literacy Council. I don't know if I'll be able to be, but I've asked for that, and I hope we can make improvements so that all of our children can we can be proud of their reading scores, because as you know, reading dictates. If you don't read well, it's hard to get a job, and there are a lot of problems in life associated with not being able to read well. And another thing we passed is the Safe Schools Act, and this was very it was controversial. It was kind of complicated. I did support the bill. What it does, one thing it does is it says that teachers or anyone at school that's certified that wants to get this extra accreditation from the anti-gang accreditation, they can voluntarily do that. So that's good. But what's so frustrating to us, and we're going to talk more about this, is the General Assembly would not address the issue of our easy access to guns. And so we're not, we can have people. I think it is good to have people trained in best practices on dealing with kids that are being recruited by gangs. But it's so we need to be doing so many other things. And it does call for intruder alerts, annual intruder alerts, and that was another thing. Those can be very controversial. They're very scary for children to experience that. But I did end up supporting it just because the reality is that's our world right now, and we do need to make sure that the children know what steps to take in that area. So that was one of the other bills. Let's see. And then we passed a bill to protect teacher planning period. It's kind of pathetic that we'd have to pass a law to protect the teacher planning period, but during the session we had, during the pandemic, there were many, there just weren't enough teachers in the building, and so they had to handle, they were often not, their planning period was taken away from them. So that was, I met with the top teachers in the state of Georgia, and that was like what their number one request is, to protect our planning period. So I'm glad we were able to get that done. And then we need more teachers, so we gave a grant for paraprofessionals to get their teaching certification, so if they want to become full teachers. So those are there are a few other things, but I know we need to go on to other topics. So I will turn it over to my colleagues, and Representative Moore, would you like to go next? Yeah.
So Becky is my seatmate, and we've laughed and we've cried she makes things sound so nice, and they're really not as nice as she does. Because let's go back to the numbers again, and it only took me a half a session to realize that there are 101 on that side, on the red side, and 77 on our side, on the blue side. I've been carrying my blue purse in silent protest since the beginning of this legislative session. Mainly because I wanted them to see us. I started to assess, we're the newer generation, and then with her generation it's gotten better, because it's been the same old, and we really haven't been able, the House of Representatives really hasn't been able as a whole to get things done differently, to bring things into the 22nd century, if you will, because it's just been a circle. So I figured if I started to do things that ordinarily would be unacceptable, but in this day and time, taking a bolder step is a little bit more acceptable these days. And then with the new crowd coming in, because this time I went back as a junior, I've been in 5 elections in 2 years. A special election, then then something else, and then another session, and 5 sessions because we had a special session. So it's been going on, and then the new session that started, we have, for the first time, we have Arabs, we have Middle Easterners, so then we have Africans finally, we have Asians and several different Asian parts of Asia, which is very exciting because they come in their traditional garb. It makes us look really good. And some of them are Republican and some are Democrats, but they're young. We have gay, we have straight. I represent the curvy. We've got the ones with the nose rings and the piercings everywhere else, and all the tattoos that you can actually see. So now we have a diverse crowd. And the Republicans who come in with their starched shirts and their ties, and there's no way or our way, and you're never gonna get anything moved, they realize that we have them beat now. So they're working with us. They know in the end that, especially with the governor getting reelected, that they're gonna stomp on us at the end. It was very nice at the beginning. They were willing to work with us and do a few things. But the old saying that my mother taught me was that if you can't beat them, at least try to work with them. So find middle of the road things to work on that they won't kick out to the curb. And the new generation of legislators are coming in like, what does all that mean? We just gonna get it done. So with me treading water lightly and clenched teeth, and the newer generation has fueled us. So what I have been told, and I know this to be true, is that we are state legislators, and each one of us have a district that we bring home the bacon to. So we work closely with our county government. We are not county, we are state. They answer to us, which is wonderful because all this time they've been going, no you can't, no you can't, no you can't. And so now we're saying, why not? So I'm gonna try to interfuse some of the things that I've done with my county on the state level. in this district here. So I don't know if any of you all know that the county has purchased that property going down here. Does anybody know what they plan on doing with that? Wait a minute. Somebody said something. Okay. It is gonna be a park. It is going to be a state-of-the-art park. So of course I have a problem with that because they have a park over here that I have gone down there. Listen, who y'all telling, okay? They have a park over here that they haven't taken care of. They have a park behind County Line United Methodist Church, my church, where on Saturday nights and Sunday mornings, people are taking target practice at the church with their guns. And they have pulled more than 22 slugs out of the church's gutters. So I have asked them to put a barrier wall up, much like it would be on the highway. And of course you go, oh, what difference is that gonna matter? It makes a big difference because if you can't see it, you can't shoot at it unless you're just gonna take aim at the wall. And the county came and they put these little teeny cinder blocks on the ground as though people who have guns are just gonna park outside of this. They don't come in cars, they walk up there. So I have been complaining a lot. So I have talked with the pastors at the churches here, and especially at County Line, and I've asked them to go back and talk with the members of the church. Here is my suggestion. It's not something, I will advocate for it. It is a great time to advocate for it. County Line United Methodist Church owned the property back there, which is now County Line Park. And they love that park, but the county has not taken care of it. Why would they want to put a state-of-the-art park over here? They're gonna actually come and take care of it because on any given day, there's no basketball hoop. So we've asked them to consider selling the property back to the church for $1 because that's what they got it for, $1. It is a matter of public record. I went down to the commission. I did it on a public forum on television and asked them to come out and take care of this. They came and put cinder blocks there. I mean, honestly, these things are this big. They are not a barrier. I don't know what in the world we were thinking. So before I started a whole big deal, I'm asking them to give the county property back to the church. My pastor says, oh, maybe you all can build another church. How are we gonna do that? I said, well, Pastor, oh yeah. I mean, God is gonna take care of that. Because I don't think that you're gonna take care of a state-of-the-art park that's gonna run all the way down here and still take care of County Line. We don't have any basketball hoops. They don't supply anything. They're not over there cleaning. I had to get the County Police to come and stay in that park just so my fellow parishioners can go to church and feel safe walking through the door. If you all noticed a few months back, someone shot out the window in the building. And if you've seen on any of my social media, directly in the woman's bathroom over the baby changing station. Now you can't get any worse than that. Because whoever is shooting didn't give a darn who was in a church, a place of God, and that there would have been a baby sitting there, had that glass come down, it would have killed the mother or the baby. So we've put them on alert. We've been arguing the point, and now it comes down to whether, the church wants that property back. I say that they should have it back, but it's, once they make the decision, they're gonna have to make it before next month so that I can go out and start fighting for the property. I was supposed to have the plans today for your park, and once I get them, I'll distribute them throughout the neighborhood and on social media and on my website so that you all can get the complete plans of what's gonna happen over here. So trying to get the state to step in and kind of give them a push, because we've not had that push in a long, long time. We've even got people on the federal level who are set on these issues. The big issue, the big elephant in the room today is the landfill. Before I was elected, we have been sitting and watching people say, we're gonna take care of that, we're gonna take care of that, we're gonna take care of that. Well, today is a really big issue, and I shared with my coworkers that, this is something that everyone has been talking about. Today on the news, one of the community members said they can't even have a family reunion or cookout because of the smell coming off the landfill. So there are new and ingenious scientific ideas that we can start to put forward. Bringing home the bacon means when we're putting together that budget, that we're fighting for a little piece of the pie. Part of that budget, some federal dollars, is what brought about this, which you all fought very hard for. I thought it was gonna be the start of something that was gonna just keep rolling, and I hope that that is what this building actually means. State-of-the-art park would be next, maybe getting some kind of control going down River Road, down to Boulder Crest, and so on and so forth, to try to pull this neighborhood back. But the main focus next should be the landfill. So we don't have any idea yet, but I've asked Becky, and I'm sure that our attorney on board, the three of us, and we have a senator as well, we can put our heads together and start looking at some scientific ways to control the stench coming off of there, because it shouldn't be anywhere where people are living. We've been in church, we've smelled it. It gets really horrible when it hits 80 degrees, and we haven't even got 80 degrees yet. So those are some of the things that I want to work on with Becky and her district. My district butts right next to hers, right here on River Road, but it is my church, and I feel responsible that I should be able to help in this community. So I have not forgotten my community. I've really been working hard. So I've got a little list of things that I've worked on, because I have been working very hard, and each and every one of these, I only had to look at this just yet, have been signed by the governor as of yesterday. My number one focus when I walked through the door was to help, and you all can scream or you don't have to, but I did, to make sure that our judges here in DeKalb County, the judges in Henry County, and the judges in Rockdale all got a pay increase. Because in DeKalb County, our Superior Court judges are not, well, they're still not yet. They're not making as much as the judges down in Richmond County, which is Augusta, Georgia. I can't believe that. Even during the pandemic, all of our judges were still working. They worked every single day. They didn't miss a day. Not a single day, except for the day they told everybody to go home. But the judges were there, and when the courthouse flooded, and the basement and the first floor were flooded, the judges still came in and went to the 5th floor, and they worked every day, whether it was by Zoom or whether it was, by telephone. But that's irrespective, because they have not had a pay raise since 2013, I believe 2013. My chief of staff, Barbara, who is a former legislator, as well, and she left the House of Representatives to go and become a state court judge, and now she's retired. They haven't had a raise since she was in office. So, and that's a really sad thing. In Rockdale County, they haven't had a raise in 23 years. So, people argue with me about the rate of pay for our sheriff. Now, remember, it's not the sheriff, but the sheriff's office. Okay, so my allegiance is not to a person, but to the office. Just like my allegiance is not to the governor, but to the state. And he runs the state right now, so we have to just kind of grin and bear it. But we do have allegiance to that office. And so with that said, the sheriff's office has not had a raise in quite some time either. And I found that the public safety officer was making more than the sheriff. And regardless of who's in that seat, so avoid yourself away from the person, they were not even making 1/10 as much as a public safety officer or the police chief. So we raised that salary up to mirror the public safety officer. So now we have a sheriff's salary that is commanding, and that's wonderful. And now our sheriff is making as much as the sheriffs in all the contiguous counties. And we have a very productive county, so we really need to keep a sheriff on board. And you wonder why they're not as focused, because they're not making as much money. If you're not making enough money on one job and you gotta go get a second job, you can't be focused on one. The other set of people were the solicitor's office as well as the DA. So all of them will experience a raise come July the 1st, and the governor did sign that bill. So I'm really proud of that all three of my counties and their judges will be getting their raise. And so that took a lot. That really took a lot, and I've been working on it since the day I got there. I got fought, stomped, beat up, and whooped over wanting to give these people money. But then it took a newer generation than mine to come in and say, well, why not? Why aren't we getting paid more? So the legislators don't get paid that much. Some of the old school are afraid to ask you all for a raise. I will be asking you all for a raise in the 2024 legislative session. I also will be asking you all to extend our terms, and not out of greed, but here's what's happening now. We are elected for a 2-year term. We work like crazy, but in 2 years, if something doesn't pass this session, it's still on the books for next session, and I can continue fighting for it. But once that session ends and it doesn't pass, I can't do anything else. Plus, we only worked realistically last year because we're gonna be in an election, a re-election for our seats to continue to work in our neighborhood. I believe the election date is March 12th. Do you all see what that looks like? March 12th, we're in the middle of session. We're somewhere right before crossover. I think crossover may be the 15th. We can't pay attention to what you all want and try to keep.
It's presidential.
Is that just presidential? So it's not gonna be
It
ours?
would be in May.
Okay, well, that's what I was thinking, my goodness. And her too. So, but we'll be in an election, our own election, because we have to qualify during the time that we're in session. So realistically, everyone is trying to figure out how they're gonna get money to run, because once we get into session, we cannot ask you for money, we can't accept a donation. It takes gold to run a campaign, whether you got somebody running against you or not. And even at the least of them, you still have to put in signs, t-shirts, come out to everything, gas, give to your staff members and all that. And it takes a lot of money and time and effort while we're in session trying to take care of our counties. So those things worry me, and I will be bringing those bills back. They did make it out of rules, which I'm really excited. Once you've written a bill, it's gone through all the channels and it hits rules and it comes out, it's ready to go to the floor. But the governor has so many other things in mind that it never made it there to come to the ballot for you all to vote and decide whether we should get a raise and whether we should extend our terms. So if y'all don't hear from me about that and it makes it on the ballot, please consider that. We need a 4-year term. This 2 years is debilitating. And I know she's young, but you know, all of us who are like $39.95 plus shipping and handling, it's becoming a lot of tax, you know, it's very taxing on our being. So just a rundown real quick, let me hand it over to you. In DeKalb County, another thing that is nice, because we don't do this often, and we should, I have officially gotten the bridge there at Memorial Drive in 285 officially dedicated to Sheriff Thomas E. Brown. He is our former sheriff. We will have an official ceremony July 6th, and it'll be in the newspapers, and we'll start inviting you all out there for the official naming and the unveiling of his signs. But Thomas Brown didn't sit down once he left the sheriff's office. He went on to become a sheriff over there and over here, and now the President of these United States tapped him to be a U.S. Marshal. And he is going all over the world at, I guess he's what, 70, 72, fulfilling the obligations that are bestowed upon him with the White House as a U.S. Marshal. And I think Thomas Brown, I think this is very fitting to name that bridge after him. He has been a public safety information officer. He has been the fire chief. He was the first black fire chief in DeKalb County to hire black women. And that was very historic, and no one made a big deal of that. He came in when Derwin Brown was killed as an interim and then ran for office and became our sheriff. He served honorably until he retired. And and then he went on to travel and then go back to become a U.S. Marshal. I don't think that there's anyone more fitting to have that bridge named, and he's still alive. So I'd like to give him his flowers while he's here. And that's the most prominent bridge that we have. And I hope that you all will join us on the 6th of July to commemorate that with him and his family. Several other things. Well, let's see. Well, we did a whole bunch of things here. And I'm just real quick. I'm trying to get something that's germane to DeKalb. I got a lot of other little things. We passed the Remember Me Life Act, the judicial circuit here, the Superior Court judges, the DeKalb and Rockdale and Henry County judges. In Henry County, we did the building and facility authorities. We created that over there to oversee parts of their government there that they're doing right. We have a certified community midwife day at the state capitol, and it will be February 15th of every year. This year we had the Yellow Rose of Texas, which is a Nikki Randall, who was a former legislator there, and we started choosing women out of DeKalb County to celebrate there. We have an official Women's Veterans, the first Women's Veterans Day in Georgia, and it will occur every, I think it's March 19th. We have several other things. We've got a nature preserve coming about. We've got a cherry blossom festival that's gonna come about. Rockdale is gonna join with DeKalb County, and we'll start to have these festivals every year. There's more to it than meets the eye. And the last controversial thing was, which took a lot of time, the Rockdale County Board of Commissioners, they have 3 commissioners there. And is anyone from Rockdale in here? Okay, well, they have 3 commissioners, and one of the commissioners serves as the chair, which is much like Michael Thurman. And we didn't feel that was fair. And so we have asked for a 5-man board, and that we would we would take a chair away, make him a commissioner, just like we have here in DeKalb County, and add a city manager who is not elected, but hired by the county, and that they would oversee the day-to-day operations to make a fairer and more equitable board. Why it's important and why I'm telling you this is because Rockdale County works directly with our government here in DeKalb and in Stonecrest more applicably. So they work together, they do things together, and we want our contiguous state counties to work together cohesively and not with one ruler and 2 other people who there's no quorum. It's either my way or the highway. And so when we're looking at that and they're working together, and it's so much deeper than that, I just wanted you all to know that, we really want to have something that mirrors us next door so that we can work together as a quadrant in a democratic stronghold as well. But it's certainly open, the 2 seats are open for anyone to run, and they would be considered like the north side of Rockdale, as it would be the north side of DeKalb. And it's a small county, but we do work with them a lot, and our county governments work together there. So we kind of want to be cohesive, not mirrored, not doing the same thing, but at least we won't be so far out of touch. So those are things that are important. I'm sure there's a whole bunch more here that I have here. And this year, I found out, and everyone likes to be recognized, that, and it's unfortunate, but we have a lot of gun violence here since we now have open carry law, which I'm very much opposed to. Saira is going to talk about that in just a few minutes. But unfortunately, since that bill has been signed into law, that says you can just walk around and carry a gun any old time. You don't have to register it. You ain't gotta tell nobody who you are. Only thing you gotta say to yourself is self. Am I a felon? Am I legally able to carry a gun? Can I go to a gun show and just buy a gun and walk home with it, and then when I get mad, start shooting everyone I want? Well, this year,
But you know where you can't go in with a gun?
where?
The state capitol. They don't let you have.
But you can go to church, and you can shoot my church up, and you can shoot at my church, and don't care about human life. Okay, you can walk anywhere you want with a gun strapped to you, and nobody knows who you are. So if you do like this, and another man do like this, y'all got to figure out which one is legally able to carry the gun, and who's more afraid at that time. Because the law of averages say that I think it's the most scared person on this earth is a coward. So if you're afraid of me and you're gonna whip your gun out, one of us gonna die. And it's been happening more and more and more. So I'm very much opposed to it. And as I was saying, and I wanted to prove a point to our governor, this governor, that we would have more deaths this year due to gun violence of young teenagers, older men and younger men alike. And so I have started to do, what are those things we write up? Resolutions for mothers who have lost their children. And one of our representatives from the federal House has helped me to put these resolutions together. Unfortunately, I have had more funerals to go to than you can shake a stick at. But on the other token, I've also, and in a happier mode, also been doing resolutions for young married couples who intend to stay together forever. And hopefully that'll seal the deal when they look up on the wall and say, well, the state of Georgia recognizes us as a couple, and we are supposed to stay together through thick and thin. So that's it. Those are the other happy things that we've been doing. Since we can't beat them, and we have to enjoin them but not join them, these are the things that I've busied myself doing. There have been a lot of down moments when we know that we couldn't win, and her deaths and my deaths have been filled with many tears, and we've had to lean on each other many times because we're really sad because it's so unfair. And it just probably would be even more unfair when the Democrats take over. So we're looking for us to take over the House and the Senate and the state of Georgia with the Democratic governors one day soon. So we have not been lazy, we have been working, and we do work together.
Let me ask this. I know, what time did you want to start with
Right,
questions? So I can,
Well, we had a late start.
I know we started a little late.
I know, so, I think maybe we could go like 5 minutes after, like if you wanna do.
I'll keep
Yeah,
it.
I do wanna have like 15 minutes.
And you all can grab any refreshments that you want.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, feel free to get up and move around. So I'll give my remarks from the perspective as a first-year legislator, because that's what I am. I'm a first-year legislator, so I'm seeing this, doughy-eyed and bushy-tailed, and you get in there and you run your campaign and you're like, well, I'm gonna do this, this, and this, and this is what I believe in, and that's what I'm gonna do. And then you go there, and you're like, oh my God, there's a lot of obstacles, right? And just, to be real, some statistics. So 850 bills were filed in the House this year, okay? Of those, 34% were filed by Democratic legislators, 66% were filed by Republican legislators. You have your idea, you write up your bill, you file it. Some are filed by Democrats, some are filed by Republicans. Of the ones that were filed by Democrats, 4.94%, so less than 5%, made it out of the House. So not became law, but made it out of the House, 5%. Compare that to 36% of bills that were authored by Republicans. So, those bills, you're over seven times more likely to get your bill out of the House if you are a Republican filer versus a Democrat filer. Now, I said 5% of those bills got out of the House. 10 of those bills that got out of the House were local bills, so only dealing with local matters, so kind of just, pro forma, nobody's really opposed to them. So, those are the odds that we are up against. So yes, and I saw a question, let me just pause for a moment. Was there a question back there on this issue?
I just had a question. You said that 850 bills were filed.
Yes.
34% of them.
By Democrats. and 66% by Republicans. But I think the main point is that 7% or you're 7 times more likely to get it out of the House if it's a Republican bill versus a Democratic bill. Less than 5% of those Democratic bills got out of the House. And most of those were the ones that were non-controversial, right? So that's kind of the environment that we are in. Yes, we file our bills. Like, of course we file our bills because we want to be able to say, like, this is what we would do if we are in charge, and it is important to put that out there. But as a practical matter, is our bill going to pass? Probably not. Let me, sometimes they do, I'm gonna give you an example though. I filed a bill about waiting in line to vote. So we have a law in the books already that says if you are over 75 years old or you are physically disabled, you don't have to wait in line if there's a line to vote. You can go to the front of the line. That's a great policy and helps more people get to the polls. And I said, okay, well, let's expand that. Let's say that if you have a child with you that is under the age of 5, if you want to go to the front of the line, you can. Because what I've seen when I'm talking to folks is if they have a young child with them, they don't want to go, right? Because they're like, look, I don't know how long the line's going to be. You know, I've got this guy, nap time's coming up. I don't know whether, you know, I can't take that chance. So I actually got 3 or 4 Republicans to sign on to my bill. It was a bipartisan bill. And then the really crazy part was I got the chair of, so all the committees, so the process, you know, you file your bill, it has to go to a committee, it has to pass out of committee, then it has to go to the rules committee, pass out of the rules committee, then it goes to the floor. So lots of obstacles before it actually gets the vote of the full body. And so if your bill, you know, the committee chairs, who are all Republicans, except for one, we have one Democratic chair, yay, Chairman Prince. Most of them are Republicans. They have the choice. They have the discretion to say, yes, we're going to hear your bill, or no, we're not going to hear your bill. So I got my bill heard. In subcommittee, it passed out of subcommittee. I got my bill, it's subcommittee and committee, and it passed out of committee, and I got to present it to rules, and I was like, and you know, they told me we're going to consider this next year. So I made a lot of progress on that bill. Was feeling really, really good about it. Guess what happened towards the end of session? An exact replica of my bill was filed by all Republicans. So they like my bill. They just don't want me to get credit for it, you know? So they'll probably pass that next year, you know? Oh, well, I'm gonna have words. There will be words. But look, that's just right. And that's kind of what we're up against. And that's great. But look, sometimes your name isn't on the bill, but it's your policy and you're putting it out there. And look, if that bill passes and my name's on it, you better be sure I'm going to take credit, but more importantly, a good policy passed, and we like that. So that is important. That's the important thing, right? You know, we also have avenues for affecting change by, this is the really tough one, and Representative Moore touched on this, like, how do we interact with our colleagues on the other side, right? Because you get more bees with honey than vinegar, right? And I think that's true, and I think you have to have a reputation for being someone who's credible, being hardworking, who's somebody who can be trusted at their word. I think that gets you, I won't say far, but it gets you somewhere. And in my view, as the minority party, if I can mitigate damage, if they have a terrible bill, but I make it a little bit less bad, that's a success from where we're standing, right? And so that's something I'm constantly keeping in mind. And you know, some of these bills, like we had one that was just particularly heart-wrenching and infuriating. Let me take that back. We had several of those. But this one, I think, was so egregious because all the data went one way and our Republican colleagues were voting the other way, and it had to do with medical intervention for transgender children. And the big thing about that bill is the bill said that the state judgment should supplant the judgment of parents and the judgment of medical professionals. And that's very scary because obviously it has this very discriminatory focus on transgender children who are an incredibly vulnerable population. But even if it wasn't transgender children, like, you don't want the state supplanting their judgment for medical professionals. You don't want them in those decisions. So, and you know, we had lots of experts that came and said why it was a bad idea. We had people with lived experience, either as parents or trans children, who were saying we don't want this, all of that evidence was ignored and Republicans voted for it anyway. So all that to say, you have these colleagues that are doing these things that, on some days you find absolutely reprehensible and inexcusable. And then you have to work with them the next day to either move something forward or make something less bad. And there is an opportunity for us as the minority party to make change. Generally it's before bills really become public. It's about those one-on-one conversations. You hear a bill in committee, or maybe a bill's coming to committee, and you have hey, I have a concern about this. Let me tell you why. This is my experience. This is what my constituents said. Whatever it is, some folks will absolutely work with you. Now, if we went, I sent out an email and said, hey, I spoke with Republican so-and-so and got this really terrible thing out of the bill, he probably wouldn't work with me again. So, it's this balance of trying to make these changes and trying to tell your constituents that you're doing good work, and that is very difficult. But I do think that maintaining these positive relationships, although it can be very, very difficult sometimes, is worth the squeeze. And then there's times where you have to get loud, right? And you realize that when you get loud, it may have, backlash about your ability to get your own bill passed or your ability to get those, little things done. But sometimes you gotta do it, and when and where is difficult. But the example I'll give you right now, we're out of session. Session ended at the end of March, so we are not currently passing laws. But right now, in this moment in time, there is a large swell in interest in gun safety legislation. And here's the fact of the matter, and I'm so aware of this. There have been shootings in Georgia and fatal shootings in Georgia. How many are we for the year? I think it's close to 200, if not over 200, right? So people have been dying.
105 mass shootings, and a mass shooting is 5 casualties or less or more.
In Georgia, there have been people dying by guns, whether it's suicide, whether it's mental health issue, whether there's lots, it's a much bigger issue than just, yes, violence. But it has many different definitions. But anyways, this is happening over and over again, and all of those things are tragic, and so many of them are preventable, right? But right now, in this moment in time, there's a little bit of a change in the air. At least that's what I'm sensing. Because Midtown Atlanta shut down for 8 hours, right? Like, we can now talk to them in terms of economic perspective. Like, look at all the things that had to stop because there was a shooter in Midtown Atlanta. And let's be honest, all these businesses that are shutting down, they're telling their Republican, legislators like, hey, I don't like this. What can we do to stop this? And by the way, for the last 10 years, you've been loosening gun restrictions, right? And we have seen an increase in gun violence. So obviously there's a correlation there. So look, I think there is a moment in time right now that we can capture and capitalize on. And even though we're not in session, we came together, we're talking on our chats and saying we need to do something, we need to pass gun legislation. And we had this idea, let's call for a special session. There's 2 ways you can have a special session. It's either the governor says that you do, or 3/5 of the members of both bodies have to vote for it. Let's call for a special session specifically to address the gun violence epidemic. And in some ways, it's almost easier to do as a special session because during the regular session, there's so many issues. There's too much going on. It's a delusion. But right now there is an interest, and right now there is a focus. And so what we have been doing, we have been preparing a letter that basically lays out our position, that lays out the legislation that we would like to see passed, which, let's be honest, it is very basic, modest, common sense legislation, right? We're not asking for anything extreme. We're asking for universal background checks. We're asking for, sorry, I've forgotten the other 2 right now. Safe storage of firearms. And there's one having to do with red flag laws. But these are very modest proposals. And we want to see the governor and the houses, the chambers take this on. So we will have a press conference tomorrow morning at the Capitol where we will be demanding this. And look, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that we are in a position to call for these things, and people want folks to lead in this moment. And Republicans would rather not deal with this issue. We're seeing a lot of silence on that side. So, it may be the first step of money, but we've got to lead on this. So you will see more on that in your AJC tomorrow morning. All right, so I've already gone too long. So let me just say, one of the biggest takeaways I took from this session was just how out of our lane we can be with our legislation. It's like, okay, you have local, you have your commissioners, you have your city council people if you live in a city, you have people, your district attorneys, all these folks are elected to do a specific job. We at the state level have this oversight function, but also we have things that only we can do. And so when you have a 40-day session, there's so much that we need to do. It was very surprising to see, for me to see, how much time we spent doing other people's jobs or trying to micromanage other people. And we weren't spending enough time doing the things that we as state legislators were in the only position to do. So that was an interesting realization, and I think that goes back to priorities and values. And why do we have people there pushing personal vendettas when we should be talking about expanding healthcare? Or talking about the gun debate. One last thing on the gun debate, which I think is very special. I told you, that chairs don't have to hear any particular bills. One thing that's so egregious about the gun debate is they won't even consider bills that have to do with gun safety, right? They won't even have a hearing so that experts can come and testify and witnesses can come testify. They don't want to talk about it at all, and I think that is quite different than almost every other policy where usually they're at least willing to hear it, even if they're not gonna vote yes on it. So it really is kind of in a league of its own, and I think that's why we need to be putting pressure now, because it is like a focus. All right, so I will leave it there. Thank you.
Let's take some questions. I'm sure y'all have some questions. Great, yes, you right here.
I wanted to know why hasn't there been a movement to shut down the landfill? Because that landfill is emitting seriously toxic gases, hazardous gas, fumes. People are getting sick. There's documented evidence because there's been a lot of testing going on. Why isn't there a movement to shut it down?
Well, I don't have a direct answer for that. I think what we should do, one thing that we talked about as colleagues is that, if you have that data, let's sit down together and look at that together. And I did talk at the parade with some of you about that, yes, with you about that. I'm not sure where our air quality monitors are here in South DeKalb. It could be there aren't enough around the landfill, but you're telling me you have data, so I haven't personally seen that data. This is a DeKalb County landfill, so we need to work with our DeKalb County commissioners as well. But I am very concerned about air quality, and so I would be interested in following up with you after this meeting to work with you all.
But when it's a conflict of interest that our commissioners are not seeing the need of the community, they're not meeting the need. So it's like we're since 1970 plus, we've argued this point over and over and over to the commissioners, but it falls on deaf ear. As Ms. Angela said, once you get somebody to hear you, then they're out of office, then you're starting all over again. I was reared, I'm 60 years in this community. The landfill started as a temporary fix to put garbage there. Then it expanded and continued to expand. I've seen loved ones in this community die out over and over. It's almost like the Pascagoula, Mississippi case with Georgia Pacific, where the water supply killed the people for decades. It's happening right here in South DeKalb County. It's happening right here. We don't have to go back to Pascagoula, Mississippi. We're experiencing it. My elders have died because of that landfill. That's a fact. I have respiratory issues
Before you
because of
go
that
on, let me
landfill.
stop you there because I don't want you to get upset.
I've been upset.
I
for
already
30+
know,
years.
I already know. You see, the thing about this job as a state representative, you just come in and think you're gonna have to follow the leader. And they tell us we got this power, but then somebody comes along and tells you, you ain't got no power. But what we do have, is the power to force a thing. Now, what thing that is, we don't know yet. There are some things that we can do as state legislators to the county and ask them to be accountable to us, because I already know the story. Some people don't know the story. So I don't want you to expend your energy at getting crazy over there, because I know already. That's the good thing about having somebody that already knows. I came here 18 years ago when we had a commissioner who's now the congressman, who's just been doing this and nothing else. So that's one of the things on my agenda.
And, yeah, and I will say, we have Doug Draper here with Georgia Conservation Voters, and they have.
Where's Doug?
He's right there, and he's with.
Former legislator?
And, yeah, former legislator, yes, that's right, and he's, they have a good environmental justice, partner, and I think I mentioned that to you, they have people, I would wanna bring them in on this conversation, as well, so, yeah, so we got a warning from, Mr. Render that we have 5 minutes, so I think,
Well, I hate that. But
yeah.
I'm on that one already, and I forced Becky to be on it with me.
Yes, I
And
wanna
she
be.
promised me that
Yeah.
she goes to the kennel.
Yes, and I have her personal phone number, and I'm gonna worry the hell out of her.
Okay.
Well, don't worry her, because we are gonna be working this summer on it. Like I said, there are some scientific things that can be done, if not, and then the power that we do have is to demand of the county. Something nobody else has done yet.
Thank you for acknowledging me.
Yes,
I'm Alice White Bussey, born and raised here in this area. And I just want to thank you, Angela, for your summary. But I want to also share with you, you don't have all your facts together on the county of what we have been doing here. We have monthly meetings here in the county line, the Ellenwood community. We've been meeting for 26 years, every third Saturday. I have yet to see you come and engage with us.
I just got this
in the
district.
meeting. So what I'm saying to you, dealing with our meetings to bring amenities to the county line, Ellenwood community, since we are the one, our family and others who built this neighborhood from the mid-1800s. And our families and the generation of us who are still here, we have made the improvements in this area, including this building that we're sitting in right now. I'm the one designed this room, brought in the kitchen and stopped the development because it was not a landmark facility that we asked for this area. The county had to pay more money to redo the architectural rendering because we were in the room. I'm saying to you, we got the police precinct built, the fire station, the first traffic light at Waldrop and River Road, all came through those monthly meetings for 26 years. And we got the park, the County Line Neighborhood Park, that is called, what the county has on its records, was a former public school where I was in the first, second, and third grade. And then when the next County Line Elementary School was built on Linecrest Road, that became the park. The first public school was in the basement, well, actually at County Line United Methodist Church for this area. So when you look at your facts, get them straight, because we've done the study, went back 200 years to find out how these families came to this area. And we want to preserve the families and the generations. But we need to have more amenities that we've been working on the 46 acres of land that we got the county to buy as green space. It's not owned by anybody but the county, as the current park is owned by the county. And it was bought years before the current leadership or anybody else came to this area. And I just want you to get your facts straight. The other part of it is,
And you remember,
you talked about I, and the church leading what has happened in this neighborhood with crime, when it's not absent, it's happening all over the world. So I don't want you to think that we have not had the harmony of a community here, taking care of our elders, our seniors, and our children. and supporting the education, but more so we need to support our elders. And I didn't hear anything in either one of your reports about what to do for seniors and their homes that need repairs and that food that they need to intake to live a better quality of life. And that smell and that coming from that landfill is supposed to have been closed 25 years ago. And it should be closed. We don't need you to just take care of the air quality.
We've
But
only
it
got a
needs
few
to be
minutes, Ms.
closed.
Gloria.
And it's the only landfill for the whole county, so all the garbage comes from north to south.
All the way to the
And
bottom.
what we want you to leave here today with understanding, we have been up to the fight. And we're gonna continue the fight, whether you're at the state level, at the local, at the county level, or whether you decide to go to Washington. We're gonna continue to be a community that's unified in spirit and in our need to have a better quality of life. And we will have that part, continue to be a part, as it is today, because it's all what we have.
Right.
And we have the church that we support, both the historic churches in this area. But we will not allow our only part and the expansion of that part to get in the way that as you propose, that what you decided to do without talking to us.
I didn't decide anything.
Well, it came across that way. It came across that way.
She's done a great job. Commissioner Eric Johnson has done a great job in helping us in the community.
But what I was trying to say, one second, Miss Gloria, you preaching to the choir on that. I used to sit in those Thursday night
I
meetings
heard
with
you,
you all.
I heard you, but you came across like what you
Came
said
across wrong.
you were going to do, what you were planning to do.
I didn't plan on anything.
Okay.
Well, you
My
came across
point
that.
is for us, and it's more about delegation than this here, that we, from the state level, start to
You
push
just
the
said
county.
that.
And if we were gonna take on the landfill today, I would like for you to know that you could ask Mr. Young to come out today to the meeting, and he would have came out to support and speak on the landfill. That was gonna be a topic of conversation.
I had it
Right, well,
here.
we like
Mr. Young, Roger Young is.
I think we need to, it sounds like we need to have a follow-up conversation.
Roger Young would have came out to the meeting. He attends our meetings on a regular basis to talk about the landfill and what's going on over there. And he tried to correct any problems. He give out his personal phone number anytime. If anybody would like it, I'll give you his work number. He would have came out tonight when it was needed. And also Commissioner Larry Johnson. If you're gonna, when you're directly talking about people, I like it when they're there so that they can be addressed. When you talking about people, you need to address them in front of their face so they can bag themselves up instead of trying to. I felt like you were trying to stab people in their backs by talking about them behind the back. And that's not how things should
Let
happen.
me get.
But thank you. Have a blessed night.
Quickly, just say, house divided cannot stand. You're talking about, the park, what I'm hearing is y'all wanna close down our current park.
No.
Am I not hearing that right? It said y'all can make a decision.
The county wants to.
The county is working with us.
The county
The
don't know
county
nothing
is
about this
working
meeting.
with
That's
us.
why you got a landfill that's still open.
Well, no, but before the park, and recreation, we wanna get that park. If the state can come and combine with the county, maybe we can get that park up and running. All those barriers can come out, we can get those streets cut through, the city trying to get cut. It's big thing.
I can't.
Hear what they're saying, but everybody talking. So please
All right, let
respect
us
what
talk.
it's talking. If we can, okay, you know.
I can